Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. I am collaborating with a bunch of other amazing homeschool moms on Homeschool Myths Debunked. So, with everyone considering homeschooling this year, I'm sure you have thought about, do I have enough money? Do I need a degree? Do I have enough space? What about socialization? Will my kids still get a diploma? So many questions, and we are all here to help answer those for you and hopefully make this not nearly as scary as you actually thought it happened to be. So, first off, I want to tell you that the biggest thing that I hear from other moms, the statement that I get is, do I have the patience? No, I do not have the patience. That is why my children go to school. Let me tell you, you do not have to be a saint to be a homeschool mom. We are all human. We are all imperfect people. No one has the patience of a saint. Although we might make it look really good sometimes, we don't. We definitely do not have all the patience that everyone thinks we do. I definitely have a lot of days where I look at my kids and I'm like, okay, we're done. We are going outside. We are blowing off the energy. Mama does not have the patience for this at all. So the thing is, no one else loves your kids as much as you do. No one knows them as well as you do. And when you're homeschooling, you have to take into account the fact that it's just your children. And oftentimes setting up a routine and a rhythm that works for all of you guys really changes the structure and how things work in your home. And you would honestly be kind of surprised. And the other thing is that I like to remind people often is your children are going to be more difficult at home and most likely better out in public because this is their safe space. And you have made it a safe enough space that they feel confident being exactly who they are. So if they are going to melt down, they're going to melt down. And they're going to do it because they know that mom and dad still love them. They know that nothing bad is going to happen to them. They can just be who they're going to be. So when you are questioning your patience, just know none of us ever has the patience that you think we do. Some days it's doing the bare bones of getting things done and letting everyone burn energy off, putting a movie on, whatever works for you guys. And that's the beauty of homeschooling. You get the chance to actually take that time, work with the patience level that you do have. And it grows. It grows on you as time goes by and as everybody gets acclimated to what you are doing. So before you decide that you're just going to toss this off because you don't have the experience and the patience or anything else, just remember they're your kids. No one's ever going to love them as much as you do. You actually have more patience and tolerance than you think you have. And it's going to do wonders for your home and your children and your whole entire life. You will find out that you are way stronger than you ever thought that you were. So, moving on to our next subject would be space. And a lot of people are concerned that they don't have enough space to homeschool. A lot of people are under the impression that you actually have to have a designated space for homeschooling, a designated schoolroom. The problem with that is homeschooling is exactly that. Schooling in your home. Your home is your school. And although we do have somewhat designated homeschool spaces here in our house, really our whole home is our school. You don't need any special specific place. Often, a lot of people need unschooling because they feel that your home is supposed to be like a public school or a private school or any other kind of school. And the beauty of homeschooling is it's just not. That's the long and short. That's the reality of it. It's just not. So we actually have a big sectional, and a lot of our desk and our maps, and we have our big table that holds our games, and we have a bookshelf in our den and some shelves, and we have our games in there. And we normally do our tea time in the den. It's a good place to snuggle up and do our read alouds. But there are days where we are in our living room, because it's, other than my bedroom, the only place that has a TV. And we have one of our random YouTube lists going. I mean, I'm guilty. I use YouTube all of the time. There's Kids Learning Tube and things like that. They're great to distract the kids, or for music, when we're doing a music study or an art study, to have a playlist up there. So den for our cozy times and for some storage, living room for when we're doing some technological kind of things. And quite often, most of our schooling is done at our dining room table, which is why I had our new command center really put up there, because most of life in my house happens in my kitchen, my dining, and my living room area. We don't have an open floor plan here in my house, but it's fairly open. So we use a lot of that. Plus, kitchens. I can't emphasize enough how much learning happens in your kitchen. And if you are not having your kids help you in the kitchen and learn basic skills and have some of their chores kitchen involved, you are missing out on a huge aspect of homeschooling. Because one of the best parts of homeschooling is we don't need home ec. It is all just part of homeschooling. So space is not a big deal. Some people have minimal curriculum that they use. Some of it's almost completely online. So if you just have a computer or a laptop for the kids to use, you just need a small space or your dining room table and maybe a shelf or a place, some cubbies to keep your curriculum, notebooks, and art supplies. It does not have to take over your whole house. Now, my husband will tell you homeschooling has taken over our entire house, but it can be incredibly minimal. And if you are a minimalist, this is great for you. Find that little nook or cranny corner and just put everything in there in one cabinet even. It doesn't have to be everywhere. Plus, there are so many opportunities to learn outside, your library, learning spaces. Homeschooling is learning everywhere. So having a designated space at home is not a deal breaker by any means whatsoever. So I want you to keep in mind that homeschool spaces are whatever you make of them. Living rooms, dens, kitchens, dining rooms, your backyard, fun museums, field trips, even your local library. All homeschool spaces. And with that, we move on to socialization. So, oftentimes, in my family, until COVID happened, and then suddenly everyone was trying to figure out socialization and homeschooling, and schooling from home was, your kids aren't going to be socialized at all. What are you going to do about socialization? And my greatest way to tackle that would happen to be, socialization is not sticking children of all ages in one room together for many, many years and asking them to sit down and be quiet and get along while there are kids with all sorts of different disabilities and different clothes and it's very inviting to have kids picked on in that kind of environment. It's why I've always seen kids blossom when they get to high school. It's a whole nother ballgame. Socialization is being able to get along with the people around you of all ages and stages, and knowing how to navigate your way through the social infrastructure. So when people ask me, how do I socialize my children? Well, my children are involved in many extracurriculars. We do swim team. We are part of 4-H, American Heritage Girls, soccer, and my kids show horses. My girls dance, piano lessons, and we have a wonderful group of homeschooling friends. We have done co-op. Didn't work out so well for us, but sometimes co-op is great for other people, and it does help with socialization. But one must remember that when you are in a co-op, everyone is interacting with people of all ages. So my children interact with, they have learned from an early age that they can talk to other adults, other kids that are not their age. They have learned how to ask for help from other people, and look up to other people. They're incredibly comfortable having a conversation with another adult. They would love to tell them. My 6-year-old loves to tell people all about her pony, and what she has learned about her pony or her chickens or her rabbits. She enjoys talking to her piano teacher. And then once or twice a week, we also go help take care of my grandmother, who lives in an independent living condo facility. And my youngest children really, really enjoy interacting with all of the older people there. And not only that, but my 6-year-old, every time we go to visit grandma, she asks her a few questions about herself, about our family, about what it was like when she was a little girl. What were her hobbies? And my grandmother enjoys talking to my children, and they listen with rapt attention. And it's heartwarming to see my kids, my little kids, walk up to someone who lived through World War II and say hello to them and say thank you for your service and talk to them. That is socialization. It is having our children be able to interact confidently with people in all of society, not just kids their age by any means. It's having them respect authority in all shapes and sizes, to be able to react well and take criticism from their peers as well as people who are older than they are. It is knowing that my daughter isn't scared to go up and talk to a police officer because she's a small child and he is an adult, and she is uncomfortable talking to adults. My daughter is incredibly comfortable talking to adults. And that to me is socialization. Yes, your kids are going to go through shy periods, and I get a lot of times homeschool kids are weird. Well, weird makes the world go round. Pretty sure nobody is normal, and I'm okay with that. I'm pretty sure weird figured out gravity and the theory of relativity, and weird probably engineered the first car. And we need weird people in this world. And if you thinking that my child is unsocialized because they don't necessarily get along with everyone in their peer group because they aren't in school does not mean that my child is a weird, unsocialized homeschooler. The other kind of myth, so we've covered weird and unsocialized. The other myth is, someone mentioned it to me the other day, that they don't get around enough people. I will say that I think sometimes as homeschoolers, we try too hard to socialize our kids. I think oftentimes homeschoolers might be over socialized, and us parents pay for that in burnout. And so sometimes we have to put ourselves back in check. The other thing is that's kind of nice is it's not weird or unsocialized, but oftentimes select socialization. And I am enjoying selectively socializing my children after my older children were in public school. I'm enjoying very much so kind of guiding the circles that they do socialize in. So we have that, and I'm more comfortable with the people that my children socialize with now more than ever. So on to money. People ask all the time, is homeschooling expensive? We do not have the money. And yes, homeschooling can be expensive. And the reality is, at least here in Northwest Ohio, we are still paying property taxes. We are still paying taxes that help support our public schools. I myself don't have a problem with that. But because we made the choice. But homeschooling can be expensive, or it can be very, very inexpensive. There are lots of great sites that offer free curriculum. There are sites that, like Ambleside Online, so much, and this is Charlotte Mason based. We do use a little bit of Ambleside Online, not 100%, but Ambleside Online, they have a wonderful, wonderful curriculum guide, and most of everything that you can find can be found free or nearly reduced, because Charlotte Mason is such a living book based program. There is a lot of books, but you can use Google Play, the Google Books. They're in the public domain. You can download them. You can put them on an e-reader. And thrift books is another place. We have a lot of books here at our house. I have a book behind problem, but there's so many you can find inexpensively, and a lot of people just use their library. Their library. You can get a lot of your worksheets for very inexpensively online, so you can, honest to goodness, homeschool for nearly free. Now there are the big box sets, and you've got, Sunlight and Abeka and Master Books, and we use a little bit here and there from a few of them, and we use some different programs for STEM and things like that. But it can either be incredibly expensive or it can be nearly free, and it just depends on your preference and your budget and what exactly it is that you want to use. And if you want to start out and you find a free program that works for you, and working towards, you find some curriculum that you might want to really try to use for the next year, at least you can research it and maybe put that aside for the next year. But curriculum can be expensive. There's no doubt about that, not in the slightest. But I have found that there are a lot of them that are not incredibly expensive or nearly free, and they are wonderful, wonderful, informative curriculums. Also, never underestimate some of the great free resources that you can find on other Instagram accounts. Look up things on Pinterest. There are so many things that you can use for nature study and math and collecting rocks and things like that, just for math manipulatives. So homeschooling can be as expensive or cheap as you choose to make it. So I always tell people, look at your budget, evaluate, and decide what you want to use and what you want your kids to get out of it. Then take everything into account and see what you can do, but never discount some of the free stuff that you can find. It can make all the difference. Next, we have teaching degrees. Do you need a teaching degree to teach your children, to homeschool your children? And the answer is no. Now, you will have to check the regulations in your state for homeschooling. Here in Ohio, where we live, the rules happen to be you have to have a GED or high school diploma or equivalent, and you have to do 900 hours. And if you do not have a teaching degree, you have to have your child's portfolio assessed by a teacher, and at the end of the year. And so you'll send that in with your notice of intent each year when you have your portfolio done. But when we became mothers, God put a crown on our head, and we became teachers right away. It was our job to teach our children obedience and other habits. It is our job to teach them how to say their names and ride a bike and do their chores and all of these things. We are our children's first teachers. And a lot of people are always scared by the fact that, well, I'm not a teacher. And I can tell you, I have met many homeschool moms that used to be teachers. And some will tell you, yeah, it helps a little bit, but honestly, not much, because homeschooling is so very different from regular school. You have to take into account that these are your children, and nobody knows your children better than you do. And you know all their quirks and how they tick and what they have a hard time with and how to make their day better. You're there to give the hugs and encouragement, and you're not doing it for 20 other kids. Just your kids. So it gives you the opportunity to really fine-tune them and teach them, one, what's very important in your home, what you and your significant other want your children to know, along with the things that they are required to know per your state standards. But if you really want to immerse them in history, good history, you have that option. You don't need a degree to do that. And there's enough great curriculum out there and enough people that will help guide you, and even co-ops, that you can teach your children. And you will always be your children's best teacher. And it's giving you moments that they are never going to forget. These are going to stay with you forever. And you have to remember, you're not going to be able to do everything. So you're going to have to give yourself a little grace. And I know it seems overwhelming, and you want them to know everything. You want to cover all of the bases, and you want to make sure that the history is to the point. And Math is never behind, and that they have great writing. But I want to remind you to give yourself a little bit of grace. And remember that none of us are perfect, but you are still your child's first and foremost best teacher. No one is going to be able to know them and love them and teach them the way you do. And that is the most important aspect of all of this. And finally, diplomas. I tell you what, most of the time, even people who have a preschooler ask me, well, what are your kids going to do for a diploma? And then I get to tell everyone, well, the fun part about that is if I want to print off a diploma for my kid, I can. A diploma is merely a certificate. You can print off a line. What counts is your transcripts. And whether you are homeschooled, and definitely if you are public schooled, all of your classes get put into those, and they keep track of all of your credits and everything that you have been taught. And that goes into your transcripts to prove that your child has covered all of the requirements that your state requires of them to graduate. You have done every single thing that they consider absolutely pertinent for a complete education. And you can find all of those requirements from your state's school board, from your local school board. And there are lots and lots of extra classes. There are co-ops. There's plenty of curriculum that will make sure that you get all of those requirements taken care of. For high school, you just have to be a little bit better on record keeping. Your record keeping has to be on point. Because your kids will, if your children want to go to high school or say that, they completed high school, you have to have those transcripts to prove that. And then if you want to print off a diploma, you can do that, and that's okay. Your children they don't have to take the GED to get a diploma. You don't, if testing is required in your state, you may have to do the required testing, but in our state, in Ohio, we don't have required testing for any of that. But we do have to do our assessment and make sure that we have everything recorded properly. So, no, your kids don't have to take the GED, but you do have to follow your state laws. And as long as all of that is on the up and up, your transcripts will prove that you have finished the required schooling for your child, and diplomas can be handed out. So I have really enjoyed debunking a few homeschool myths for all of you guys, and I really hope you enjoyed the other videos from the other moms in this collaboration. Have a good day.